Something interesting in Genesis. Today we're in Genesis chapter 4. Cain and Abel. And Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. What's interesting is Adam and Eve just finished partaking of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, basically going against God's commandment. And during this time, or just before that happened, we never saw anything between Adam and Eve knowing each other. So it's interesting that after they partook of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, in the King James Bible it says knew. And Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. And she again bare his brother Abel. And Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. So it's interesting in verse 2 that it doesn't say that Adam knew Eve again, and then she conceived. It says, and she again bare his brother Abel. So to me, this could appear that these are the first set of twins, Cain and Abel, identical twins, virtually identical twins. Verse 3, and in the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought fruit of the ground as an offering unto the Lord, and Abel he also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel to his offering, but unto Cain and to his offering he had not respect. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. So this is interesting as well, because we get the first sacrifice, if you will, of an animal. And Abel, because he is a shepherd, brought an animal, and it was pleasing unto God. But Cain brought his first fruits, if we will. Maybe it's leftovers, we don't know what. And it was not accepted by God. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. And the Lord said unto Cain, Why art thou wroth? Why is thy countenance fallen? If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted. And if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. So, here we get an indication that it has something to do with his countenance as well. If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted. But his countenance, Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. So, which is interesting, because when you see, I'm trying to think where it is. I think it's in 2 Kings. I could be wrong. I should look this one up. But basically, there's a Syrian king, and one of the prophets, the Syrian king had his assistant, his number one guy, go to a prophet and say, will my king live? And the prophet said, yes, your king will live, and stared at the guy till the guy was ashamed. And the guy's like, what's going on? And the prophet said, God has just shown me that you are going to rip babies out of mothers and kill people, and then you're going to be the next king. And the servant said, God forbid. No, there's no way. That's not in my heart. I'm not going to do this. And the prophet was basically looking at his countenance, and God showed him that he was a murderer. So then this servant went back to his king, and the king said, "What did the prophet say?" And he said, "The prophet said, you're going to live." And the guy went over, grabbed the towel, soaked the towel, and then put it over his king's face and drowned him, suffocated him, killed him, murdered him. And the next day he became king. So it's interesting that we get the same kind of an idea here, that Cain was very wroth and his countenance fell. And I think God saw that he was wanting to murder Abel, wanting to kill him, because he was very upset. Because right here we see it. Verse 8, and Cain talked with Abel's brother, and it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and slew him. And the Lord said unto Cain, where is Abel thy brother? And he said, I know not, am I my brother's keeper? And he said, what hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. And now thou art cursed from the earth, which hath opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. When thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength, and a fugitive and a vagabond thou shalt be in the earth. Now, I have a theory, and this is, I don't know where this came from, but I just thought of the idea of, what if this is the first instance of cannibalism? I know it sounds weird, but we don't have a body, and God is asking, where's your brother? All I see is blood, basically. And when you see the word cannibalism, Cain, Abelism, it's interesting that that's the English word for cannibalism, and you have the word Cain and Abel together. And again, I think they were twins, identical twins. Is this the first instance? Because there was no law, no rules, no anything against this. But is this the first instance of cannibalism? And I'm not saying that he ate him. What I'm saying is maybe he killed him by biting him, stoning him, whatever it is. We don't see any evidence here that he used a stick, a stone, anything. He could have used his bare hands. And if anybody gets into a fight, a dirty fighter is someone that bites someone. That's considered dirty. That's the dirtiest thing that you can do to someone, is bite them. And it's interesting that perhaps this is what happened here. Cain could have rose up, put his hands on Abel, bit him so that he died, and then tried to bury him. So that's just a theory of mine. So, which opened her mouth, which is an interesting way of putting it, to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. And thou tillest the ground, shalt not hence yield thee her strength, and a fugitive vagabond thou shalt be on earth. And Cain said unto the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, thou hast driven me out of this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid. And I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth. And it shall come to pass that everyone that findeth me shall slay me. Now, some people are like, well, how can Cain say this if there's no one else here? I think this is future tense. Like in the future, someone's going to find out, because, again, if he looks like Abel, they're going to know that Cain killed Abel for whatever reason in the future, and they're going to take vengeance on that. This is what it looks like, that Cain is seeing into the future, and perhaps this is from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that shows you everything from the present into the future, and God did not want people to see that without his guidance. Just a thought. And the Lord said unto him, therefore, whoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest anyone finding him should kill him. So this is future. And Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. Now, some translations say that this is a land of wandering, which is kind of interesting. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived, because Adam had more sons and daughters, and bare Enoch, which is also interesting because Seth, down the road, not Seth, but down the road we see, and we'll talk about that in Adam's descendants, but we'll see that these names are being repeated, and it's almost like Cain saw the future and saw the names of his children and started trying to recreate Enoch, Methuselah, all this kind of stuff, Lamech, because after this, we see these names pop up again from the line of Seth, which is interesting. Anyways, Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch, and he builded a city and called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. And unto Enoch was born Arad. Arad begat Mehujahel, and Mehujahel begat Methuselah, and Methuselah begat Lamech. So here we have Lamech's descendants. Lamech took unto him 2 wives, and the name of one was Ada, the name of the other Zillah. Now this wasn't illegal. This was not illegal because there was no commandment to have only one wife. Just it was from the very beginning that man should cleave unto a woman, and they shall become one. And Ada bare Jabal. He was the father of such as dwell in tents, and of such as have cattle. And his brother's name was Jubal, and he was the father of all such as handle the harp and organ. And Zillah, she also bare Tubal-Cain, an instructor of every artificer in brass, artificer and iron. And the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. And Lamech said unto his wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice, ye wives of Lamech, hearken unto my speech. For I have slain a man to my wounding, and a young man to my hurt. So, based on some other sources that I have read, I think the book of Jubilees, the book of Enoch, and a few others, it could look like that Lamech killed Cain by accident on a hunting expedition. So it looks like a little bit of a reach here, but he says, for I have slain a man to my wounding, and a young man to my hurt. So he's explaining to his wives that he also killed a young man. So I've slain a man that was coming after me, or whatever it is, to my wounding, and a young man to my hurt. So which is interesting. It almost looks like self-defense, and then a young man to my hurt. If Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, truly Lamech 70 and sevenfold. So he knew about Cain, he knew about the mark, he knew that if anyone touches Cain, that they shall be avenged sevenfold. So because he killed Cain, again my theory, truly Lamech 70 and sevenfold. So he's basically asking that he should be protected more because he killed someone that had already had a mark and was it was basically illegal to kill Cain. So the only reason I mention this is in verse 25. The next words are, and Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son, and called his name Seth. For God, said she, hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. So it's interesting that right after Lamech talks about it, that Adam knew his wife again, she bare a son. And to Seth, to him also there was born a son, and he called his name Enos. And then men began to call upon the name of the Lord. And then chapter 5, we're going to talk about Adam's descendants, and we're going to get into the flood. So I hope you got something out of that, and I hope your interest gets piqued a little bit, because the book of Genesis is very interesting to read. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Feel free to leave a comment, and I'll see you in another video. Bye for now.